And welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live here at Citizen Television, talking live with Absa Kenya CEO Jeremy Awori, still in his office, literally burning the midnight oil. Jeremy, you were saying earlier on, and I remember, Absa transitioned with a lot of razzmatazz earlier this year, and then boom, coronavirus hit, and everything was put on pause. Has it been tough?
Yeah, I think this has been tough for many businesses, and ours is not excluded. Nobody could have predicted this would happen. But, I think now in business you have to be agile. I think you have to be ready to respond to whatever the environment throws at us. And our team, I think, has responded pretty quickly. We've re-looked at our priorities. Some of the core agenda items still remain the same. We're still as committed to our customers. In fact, even more than ever now. We're committed to growing our business. We're committed to helping play a role in growing this economy. So I think for us, it just means we had to shift gear a little bit. And I think, whilst this is a big challenge, it's also an opportunity for us to show that we can be a force for good, here in Kenya.
Okay, at the same time, individuals, SMEs, even corporates are going to have a hard time right now and facing financial challenges. How can banks make it easier for them, banks like yours, Jeremy?
I think now is really the time to show care and understanding for customers. Like I said, this is a 1 in 100 kind of event. And I think if we use the normal rules that people would take, if somebody's defaulting on a loan, you quickly try and come in, and sell their security. I don't think that's the answer in this occasion. I think for us in particular here at Absa, we're really trying to listen and understand the challenges our customers are going through. We're working with them. We've come up with a number of initiatives, as have other banks, including repayment holidays. So for us in Absa, we've given a 3-month repayment holiday to tens of thousands of customers. We've already restructured over 10 billion shillings in customer loans to ease their payments. Because now the essential thing is that those businesses don't go bust, because those businesses are employing Kenyans and we need to support them through this difficult period. So we really are willing to work with them. We're willing to talk to them to see how we can help them through, working with our regulator, working with the government around these plans. And I think some of the things that have already been done, like the reduction of the cash reserve ratio, is helping the liquidity here. So the other thing that we are also trying to do, given the fact that we're in an environment where we're social distancing, we're working remotely, is putting extra effort into all the digital channels and remote channels, making sure those channels are up almost 100% of the time. Because we've already seen we're avoiding using cash. We're making payments. We've made the payments free for customers between bank to M-Pesa, bank to other mobile money platforms, and even bank to bank. So I think these are a few of the initiatives where we're trying to support our customers through this difficult period.
Yeah, you say you spent about 10 billion shillings so far, Jeremy. Do we have a rough estimate or percentage of companies and individuals who have sought a moratorium on loans? And if you are granting them that moratorium?
Yeah, I can't speak about the industry. I know that a number of banks have also put in place these measures. For us, as I say, they're in the tens of thousands, so they're not a few singular cases. And it also touches on retail customers, SME customers, as well as corporate customers. Because think about it, at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of pomp and excitement. We're starting a new year, we're starting a new decade, and then 3 months later, your company is struggling, you've lost your job, maybe your spouse has lost their job. So we're really just, as I say, trying to give care and attention to them. And I think the banking industry has really come to the party. And you'll see more initiatives. We're not done yet because this pandemic isn't done yet. And we're going to have to respond in the coming days, weeks and months, to try and support our customers through this process.
Yeah, we talk about banks at the end of the day, and they will want loan repayments to continue. Yet some businesses may not have enough capital to kickstart post-corona. You're almost between a rock and a hard place, Jeremy.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I mean, I think here we're seeing a medical situation now really triggering off an economically difficult environment. Inevitably, there are going to be casualties, but we want to minimize those casualties. So when we look at moratoriums, we look at restructuring. What essentially we're trying to do here is give people a bit of a break so they don't have to necessarily make their loan repayment in the coming months, and instead maybe use that to keep people employed, to keep their businesses running, to keep services running for the Kenyan people. We can always reschedule and get those payments at a later date when their businesses are back on their feet. Because frankly, what's the alternative? They go under, everybody suffers. I don't think that's the solution for us in this environment.
Yeah, Jeremy, another thing that you are very keen to talk about is the fact that the effects of this pandemic, psychological effects, distress, anxiety, stress levels, all of that, and it's coming to bear. Your thoughts on how you can partner, maybe with government, to tackle this beast that's about to unleash itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think this is a really serious problem. I mean, we've never been faced with the kind of conditions that we're faced with at the moment. We're faced with people not necessarily being as aware about this pandemic. There's people who are scared, quite rightly. There's people who are uncertain. There's a lot of anxiety where people are working remotely, and don't always have the conditions to make it easy to work remotely. So we're seeing other unintended things happening. We're seeing increases in domestic abuse. We're seeing, people even possibly getting even into depression. So one of the things we're working as Absa, as a group, is to work with the ministry to take care of two different sets of people. The first set of people is our frontline healthcare givers who are heroes day to day. We've got to think what it actually means for you to be a doctor, a nurse, a healthcare giver, to wake up in the morning to go to help treat and take care of people who have the virus or may have the virus. That puts a lot of strain on you as an individual. So what we want to do is to provide that help, that emotional help, that counseling to be able to cope with this situation. Then you've got the other set of people, those who are either in quarantine or those who are in isolation. If we take the ones in isolation, some of them, 30% of them may be asymptomatic, but wondering when they're going to, if they're going to get the full-blown symptoms. That's pretty stressful. And you're controlled. You cannot leave when you want to. You're not in a familiar environment. You can't see your family members when you want to. So one of the things we've put in is a COVID-19 wellness care line. This basically is available for both the healthcare workers and professionals and also those in isolation and quarantine. So it's not just for them in quarantine, but also for their families, to just make this process a little bit easier for them. Because if we don't tackle these issues now, it's going to get worse and worse, especially if this pandemic lasts longer. So I'm looking and I'm urging corporate leaders in their companies to come and try and support this initiative as well. Because yes, there's physical sickness, but there's also mental and emotional care that we need to give Kenyans through this process.
I'm glad you mentioned the frontline warriors, Jeremy. Thanks so much for that. That's good information. At the same time, you mentioned the corporates, and you're part of the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund. So far, how much has been raised, and where is this money primarily being channeled?
Yeah, so when the fund was started, it was predominantly to try and raise money and to effectively use that money to fight this pandemic. So what we did is we first set about trying to get a fundraising initiative up. I'm heading the fundraising arm. We've got different committees that are working on different things. So, for example, we have a committee, led by James Mwangi, who are looking at the healthcare and equipment aspects. We've got a separate committee which is looking at the livelihoods and food aspect that was covered earlier in the program. And then we have things like communication, education, work streams as well. So what we've managed to do in the last 10 days to 2 weeks is we've managed to raise about 1.3 billion from the private sector. And this money obviously has come from Kenyans and companies who are interested in making a difference. So you've got the two work streams, the healthcare and equipment work stream and the livelihoods work stream. We've also, I should mention, we've partnered with professional firms, PwCs, EY, Deloitte's, KPMG, to make sure that there's absolute transparency and governance through this process. We want to make sure that every shilling we raise is effectively and efficiently used, and that all of that money goes towards fighting this pandemic, not going towards administration. So we're all giving our time pro bono. So right now, where the focus is on preventing the transmission of this. We don't want the contagion. We need to build capability. So it's going towards looking at the healthcare and equipment front. I think there's a short-term focus around protecting healthcare workers, making sure that they don't get infected. And then we've also got in parallel running at the same time, looking at livelihoods. We recognize that this pandemic is affecting our economy. We've heard today that GDP growth is going to drop to 2%. Now, that means people are going to lose jobs. How are they going to feed their families? So the government is working with the private sector. We're trying to use technology, and a number of our big companies are working on ways that we can either distribute food tokens or food to tide them over during this difficult period. So it's been a very busy time. There's no doubt much more to do, but we're working very closely between the fund and the government to be as effective as we can.
Jeremy, I don't want you to go away. I want to take a quick break and come back, because there's lots of tweets coming in, questions from our audience to you, and also a couple of other questions. Personal account customers, what happens to them? Their lives are in disarray. I want to ask you that. And also a question like, are you offering any support to companies producing medical equipment? Think about that as we take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment. That's Absa Kenya CEO Jeremy Awori talking to us about banking at this time of the corona pandemic. We'll take a quick break, come back, take your questions as well. Remember, JKLive, powered by Absa.